Hello and welcome to the second installment of the Rune Shamanism video series. My name is Michael William Denney, and today we're going to be talking about the second 8 in the Elder Futhark. In case you're coming to this video first, my recommendation is to go back and watch Rune Shamanism Level 1, the first 8. In that, I go into depth concerning my theory about the origin of the runes and my working theory with this particular video series, which, by the way, should be watched in conjunction with the book, Rune Shamanism. This is meant to be an accompaniment to that book. Very briefly, just to review, what we talked about first off is that the academic theory of the origin of the runes, as well as many modern rune practitioners and experts, the academic version says that the runes are simply the tribal Germanic attempt at copying Mediterranean alphabets. But as I spoke about in the first installment, that's pure conjecture. There's absolutely no hard evidence whatsoever as to how the Germanic tribes came up with their form of alphabet. One thing I didn't mention in the first video, which is in the book, which I will mention again, is that, you know, if the Germanic tribes had simply chosen to copy Mediterranean civilized society and creating their own alphabet, they would have done what everybody in the Mediterranean was doing, which is simply copy the same order for the letters. But the letter order in the Futhark is absolutely unique in all of the world. There's no other alphabet that goes in that order. And so it doesn't make any sense. Also, the Germanic tribes were scattered all over the place, and there was no unified country. So it also doesn't make any sense that they would be unified in their approach to letter order. What this indicates to me is that the runes are, in fact, a very ancient oral tradition that, in my belief, goes all the way back into Paleolithic times, into the Ice Ages. And so we start from there. And the 3/8, the Futhark is made up of 3 levels, which we call the 3/8. And the first level we spoke about on the first video, which is the level of physical manifested reality. And the first 8 is about gathering energy. You know, if you look at it, Fehu, Uruz, these are about gathering energy, filling yourself with energy. And so my belief is that this oral tradition was a sacred spiritual tradition that I believe was probably passed down from father to son. The reason why I make that assumption is because in pre-Christian times there was 2 forms of magic. There was what was known as Galdor, which means to chant, and the runes were part of that aspect, which was practiced by males, and it has a stronger connection with left-brained kinds of activities, which is, you know, generally speaking, more of a male scenario. And the other aspect of mysticism or magic that was practiced in pre-Christian times was called seethe, which means to boil. And this was practiced by women, and it was the women just simply didn't need anything to connect directly to the spirits and the deities, and they practiced prophecy. So that's more of a right-brained approach to spirituality. And so our Germanic ancestors had this understanding that, generally speaking, men were more left-brained and women were more right-brained. And so they capitalized on that. Again, another Germanic trait is to be very practical. What practically works the best? You know, if it works, don't fix it, is absolutely a Germanic thought process. And our tribal ancestors were very much the same. So that's why I believe that this was very likely, the runes were a tradition that was passed down from father to son, because during the Paleolithic Ice Age times, everything was passed down from father to son. There was no such thing as an institutionalized priesthood. There may have been a shaman, but as we saw when Tacitus writes about divination among the pre-Christian Germanic tribes, it could either be a priest or it could be the head of the household, the male of the household, would act as the priest for the household. So I believe that this is how it was transmitted. I can't prove it, and I'm okay if that's not true, but in any case it works. So let's take a look at how the 3/8 work. As I talked about in the first video, I believe that the 3/8 are split up into Villi, which is the navel center, willpower, Villi in the navel center, Ve in the heart center, which has to do with the combination of physical and non-physical, which is where the soul connects with physical reality. It's a non-physical entity that connects through the body to a physical reality. And then the 3/8 would be Odin, which would be the upper center, and this would be pure non-physical spiritual powers. And as I said before, all the runes are multifaceted, and so they connect on all three of these levels. But if you look at it, you'll see that the 3/8 seem to be split up in these categories. And we went through the first 8, which I believe taught the initiate, the hunter initiate, how to function in the physical world. And we went through the whole process, and the end result of that, getting himself physically empowered and established, brings him fulfillment and joy on a physical level, which is the last rune. And now we move into the second phase. And in the second phase, I believe this is, if the first level is more on the physical level, the second phase would be more on the emotional, the psychological level, the level of the soul, where we interact, our identity as souls interacting with physical reality. This is where it comes together. And of course, the 3/8 has to do with pure spirituality, which we'll talk about in the third video. So, since I wrote the book, I've, of course, meditated, and to me, the runes are infinite in scope. And I really don't think that there's anybody who can completely, totally master on all levels what the runes are. They're holographic in nature, they're infinite in nature, so, the best we can do is make some observations. And so some of my observations now is that the first level is about gathering energy. Fehu, uruz, is about gathering energy into the body. And once you've gathered energy, then what happens is, then you have to start trimming away the excess. Just like in a forest, when we want to prevent forest fires, people will go out and they'll cut out, a lot of the excess underbrush, and, if there's just too much potential for firewood out there, we trim it away. And that's basically what fires are too. Fires burn away the excess. And so this second 8 has a lot to do with that. And you'll see as we go through, the first half of the first 8 seems very limiting and really about cutting off and getting rid of excess and limiting. And then as we get through the second 8, it's about purifying and focusing. And so this is what we're going to do. So once the hunter initiate gets through the first 8 and he's mastered to some degree his life on the physical level, now he has to learn how to focus that energy on a emotional, mental level, on the soul level. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to go through all of those. So let's just begin. Okay, so the first rune in the second 8 is the rune High-Yahl. And I'm pronouncing it High-Yahl because the G sound very oftentimes in earlier Germanic languages was more of a Y. And that's why in English the word is hail, meaning the hailstone. And that's the meaning of this rune. It means hailstone. But to me, it has the hail, the snow, has a much deeper understanding. You know, the primordial earth goddess of the Germanic tribal people was Hole. And her, if there was anything that she resonates with the most, it would be snow and hail. And they say even today in Germany, you know, mothers, when it's snowing, they'll say to their little kids, look, Mother Hole is shaking out her bedspread, meaning the down is coming out of the bedspread, which looks like the snow. So she's very connected to that. And hail, you know, and snow, when it falls to the ground, it's cold. So it has that constrictive feeling of cold. And this feeling of constriction we'll find throughout at least the first half of the second 8 of the runes. And it's that constriction that allows the water to congeal and become ice. And then that ice, as it builds up and snowfall on the mountains, becomes what we, you know, a watershed, which is extremely important. It nourishes. And without that snowfall, we don't have that nourishing of the streams and the rivers that go down into the valley and nourish all the crops and give the plants what they need, and the animals the ability to eat and all that. So hail is like the first cause when it comes to nourishment. And hail comes from the same root word for health. In fact, health is haileth. To be hailithi is to be whole. So hail means wholeness. You know, now it's very popular to have holistic medicine. And hail is the epitome of holistic medicine, you know, to heal. And in the Old English, you know, when you greeted somebody, you would say, Vastu hail. May you be hail, may you be whole. And it's this idea of health, may you be healthy and whole. So when this is applied to the mental state or even the physical state, it means that it's healing by getting rid of excess. We know, for example, cancer is an excess growth, cellular growth. And so hail has the healing effect of getting rid of the excess, which causes disease. Whereas in the first 8, you know, in Fehu and Uruz, again, it's about gathering energy to yourself. They can be very healing. But sometimes, you know, you have to determine, do we need more energy or do we need to trim off the excess energy? So that's what hail is doing. Hail is coming down. On the emotional level, hail means to do self-assessment, to be asking yourself, okay, what is it that I want? What works? What doesn't work? You know, the first half of these second 8, lots of times, you know, if you were to Google a lot of them, you'll get all kinds of negative interpretations, that hail means stop, and it's, you know, it's very negative. And this shows, in my understanding, a complete lack of understanding of what the runes are. The runes are the eternal sound vibrations that create, maintain, and destroy the universe. They're everything. They weave the web matrix of weird, which we all rest upon. So there's no negative rune, you know. What's also interesting is that you don't see, you know, let me take a look. Are any of these reversible in this second? Let's see, no, very few. Only one of these runes in the second 8 is reversible. So that means, you know, if a rune isn't reversible, it means there's no negative to it. The only thing that can be possibly deemed negative is the challenge that you will experience as a result of these runes as they come in to heal and to cut away the excess, to help you focus and be more pure and more powerful in your energy. So that's what's happening here. I could go on and on about the High-Yahl rune. It's an amazing rune and very important. But on an emotional level, it's about self-assessment. What works? What doesn't? How can I improve the situation? How can I trim off that which isn't working so I can be more effective in life and more effective on an emotional level? Thinking critically, responding practically. This is just the tiny tip of the surface when it comes to High-Yahl. So once you've done that, once you've brought in this pure energy directly from the heavenly realms, pure cleansing energy, which can be challenging only if you're hanging on to old excess. Once you bring this energy in, then what ends up happening is you become aware of limitation. And we get into the next rune, which is Nauthiz. Nauthiz comes from the Proto-Germanic na-wicht, na-white, made up of two words, na and white. And so not means that which has no spirit, that which is without energy. Now it doesn't mean that it's empty of energy, it actually means potential. And so we experience it as a constriction. In fact, one of the rune poems talks about it as being constriction. And it's called, we also call it need, and it's a rune called need fire. And, if we're talking about Paleolithic Ice Age people, the need to invent a way to manufacture fire out of thin air, that can only come from somebody who's desperate, and who's more desperate to have fire is people who are in the north, in the Ice Ages. And of course we have that old adage which says that necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity meaning need, meaning constriction, meaning, you're in a desperate place. The things that come out of the Naut rune, the Nauthiz rune, are things that we wouldn't normally come up with if we didn't have to. So necessity, the situation necessitates some kind of invention to help us function. And so this is the Naut rune. Again, this is one of those runes that is seen as negative. And again, in my experience, people who see this as negative, in my understanding, the only way you could experience this negatively is if you're holding on to old patterns. I run into this a lot when I do my rune readings, and when this comes up, I tell the client that, you're about to enter into a phase where you're going to feel constricted. You may feel frustrated. You may feel like, you have no place to go. You don't know what to do. And what this really means is this is the universe squeezing you so that you will come up with something new. You will think outside of the box. And that's what's necessary. If you don't think outside of the box, you will definitely feel stuck. So it's only negative if you hold on to the old patterns, if you hold on to the excess that's no longer working for you. When you're about to break through into new realms, to create something new, whether that be an idea, a business, or simply just an attitude, a frame of mind. This is the Naut rune. And so what I tell my clients is, what you can do is just simply ask yourself the question, what can I do differently in this situation? What have I been doing that hasn't been working? Probably won't work again. So what can I do differently? Because people go, I don't know what to do. Good. Now that means that you can open yourself up to a new reference, a new frame of reference. And so you can learn a new skill. So you ask yourself, what can I do differently? Just by asking that question, you open yourself up to something. And the answers will come. So this is the power of the need rune. It's extremely important. We wouldn't evolve without it. So again, as we're going through this second 8, we're running into feelings of constriction, which are forcing us to cut off the excess and, in fact, expand into new avenues we haven't been before. So once the individual has been cleansed through High-Yahl and they are then forced to think differently because of the constriction of the need rune. Then you get to become self-sufficient, right? The guy who's able to make his own fire, he doesn't need a lightning strike or a forest fire or somebody else's fire. He can do it himself. So this is the Eee-Sah rune. And again, we've got the constriction of ice. Eee-Sah means ice. And again, this is sometimes seen as a negative rune, but really, what is negative about a healthy ego? We have to have a healthy ego. Otherwise, we won't function. We have to be self-sufficient. And so this rune of Eee-Sah is that healthy sense of self. And it's no coincidence that the word Eee-Sah has similarities to the Germanic word for I and ego. Ich, I. Those are ek. Those are very similar to the sound Eee-Sah. And of course, the symbol is very clear. It's just one, an individual. So it is important that we experience true individuality, a healthy ego. We have to have a healthy ego. And this is Eee-Sah. Eee-Sah is a very empowering rune on that level. So then we move, once we've now gone through this process and we've developed a healthy ego, then the next logical step is learning how to integrate. Because, being a healthy individual is fine, but we get lonely and we want connection. And we also have to work cooperatively with others. So we move into the next rune, which is the rune of relationship, the rune of Yera. It's interesting, the word Yera, meaning year, is often spelled gear with a G. And interestingly, what does a gear look like? It's two interlocking things that come together and it creates. The year is the interlocking of the months, the interlocking of the seasons, and it is this cooperation of the interlocking and the flow of the seasons that creates the year. Life would become static and cease to exist without this flow. So on the individual level, Yera is the rune of interaction. It's the rune of marriage. It's the rune of relationship, the rune of cooperation. And that can only happen when we have a healthy sense of self. So oftentimes in relationships, people lose their identity in the other person. And while that can be a really exciting thing in the beginning, I can't tell where you stop and I begin. It's a very, very intense experience. If that continues, it's disastrous. The relationship won't survive. You have to have a healthy sense of ego while being in relationship with another person, learning how to cooperate and give and receive while still retaining your own sense of self and allowing your partner their own sense of self. And this is true whether this be a romantic relationship, family relationship, a work relationship, it doesn't matter. This has to come together. So this is the Yera rune. And, we're now getting ready to move to the apex of all of the runes. And it's interesting because, I'm going to stay on Yera for a little while, which is because, again, as a rune counselor, I get a lot of people calling me wanting to ask questions about their relationship. And, I can remember once along many years ago, I was dating a woman, and, we argued. And she didn't know how to do that. She did not know how to resolve conflict. And so she would complain and say, I remember once we were talking to a teacher of ours, and she complained and she said, I never fought like this with my ex-boyfriend. And he said, that's why you're not with him. And so when we get to this place where we're in relationship, here's what's going to happen. You are going to confront once again limitations within yourself that no longer serve you. And this pressure that builds up is going to build up into an explosion of energy, which we experience as conflict. But this conflict is absolutely necessary in order to get closer, to learn true intimacy. So as we're going through, the cycle here, we started with the cleansing energy, which created a constriction, which caused us to expand our thought process, which helped us to become self-sufficient, which then allowed us the ability to have true relationship and interaction, which once again put pressure on the ego, which then results in the tensions that arise between becoming more intimate with whomever. And then we get to the center of all of the runes, which is Yu-Hwaz, the yew tree. This is the this is the hub where the runes are now, shifting upon. And this is the most challenging of all the runes. And if there is any such thing as one rune that is, quote, negative, it would be this one, because this is a rune that is impossible to experience without experiencing challenge. And it's the rune of evolution, life to death to life. And if you look at the symbol here, you see that the roots, the branches are going down into the ground, and the roots are then coming up out of the ground. And the yew tree is very special because it's a tree that the branches actually grow into the soil and then go through the soil and come up again as another yew tree. So it's an amazing thing. It dies on the inside and grows where it can become hollow, and it grows like that. It's just an amazing tree. The branches are toxic. If you breathe the fumes of it, it's toxic. If animals eat the yew tree, it can kill them. It's poisonous. Shamans have been known to sit under the branches of the yew tree because the toxic vapors will put them into a trance-like state and they can have a shamanic experience. So it really is the rune of shamans. And shamans experience this, what we call a shamanic initiation, where they go through a death. And you find this, in every culture. Somebody will become very sick and almost die. And when they resurrect, they have these new powers. Shamans very often will have this experience in a vision where they're being torn to pieces or cut into pieces and then thrown into a vat and then cooked and then pulled out again by the gods as being whole. So there's no way to go through this experience without having challenge. And it is the death of the ego, the death of the self. And from the perspective of the second 8, as we're going through cutting off the excess and purifying the self, this is the apex of it. And now we see the runes begin to shift. And, in the second 8, the first half was very constrictive, getting rid of excess energy. And now we're going to see the focus of energy. We're no longer constricting or, lopping off huge chunks of ourself or the energy involved. Now we're focusing it. So once we go through this death and resurrection now, we move on to the next rune. And the next rune is Perthro, the lot cup. And Perthro is a rune of Orlog, origin law. For those familiar with the East Indian tradition, it has a strong correlation with Dharma. Dharma, there's a difference between Dharma and karma, and people throw these words out and don't understand the difference between them. Dharma, as I said, is your Orlog, your origin law, that which you have been born with. To follow one's own Dharma, your own Orlog, is your own path that you were brought here. You were programmed for this one thing in your life to be. This is your Orlog, this is your lot in life. And so the lot cup, that's something that's impossible to avoid or to change. And so when you've gone through this death and resurrection in the Yu rune, Yu-Hwaz rune, then you are capable now. All of the excess has been stripped off and you are capable of walking your Dharma. Your attachments to unnecessary things have been burned away. Now you can walk your Dharma, your Orlog, your origin law. And as we move through that, then what ends up happening is now we see almost a reversal of what's been going on. In the first half of the second eight, you see constriction, you see getting rid of excess, you see trial by fire. These are very challenging, potentially limiting aspects of the self. And now we reach the next rune of Ell-Hahz, the elk rune. And as you look at the symbolism here, it looks like a shaman with his arms raised out to heaven. And he is channeling energy from both heaven and earth. And what gives him the ability to do this? Well, he has now been capable of looking at his Orlog and following that through Pear-Throw. Now when you're walking your true path, unimpeded, now you have this ability to project spiritual energy. This is why this is a rune of protection, because the shaman who has this ability to straddle both worlds, which is what we're doing in this middle eight, this second eight. We're straddling both the physical and the spiritual, and it's a purely human experience. And so the shaman is somebody who's got through that. He's following his Orlog. Nothing is preventing him from tapping into both the physical and the spiritual. And as a result, boom, like a star, he shines with this power that protects and cleanses. And, the idea of antlers is symbolic, at the very least, of one thing, which is antenna. A lot of shamans used to wear elk antler headdresses, and we see this in some of the depictions of Celtic shamanic deities having antlers, and that's what this represents. It's the antenna that we connect to that which is spiritual, and we receive and we project all at the same time. This is the true beginning, the very beginning of true spirituality is coming into this rune, Ell-Hahz. So now that the initiate has gone through all of these stages now, and he's now able to project this pure power, what happens? We get the result. So the eighth rune in all the eights is always a result. You do all the work. The first seven is the work. The eighth is the natural, unavoidable result. And the unavoidable result of going through this is that he connects with his Sah-Wul, his soul. Sawul is a solar rune, and in Old English, the name for soul and sun is Sah-Wul. Sunna is another name for the sun, but this means that the sun represents the soul. And we find this still today in the East Indian Vedic Hindu tradition, which has retained an unbroken connection into its original Proto-Indo-European root religion. And they have this understanding that the sun is representative of the soul. And so our ancestors had this understanding as well. So the rune Sawul is when the initiate has now truly begun the quest to connect on a spiritual level. And we see this now because now we're going to move from this into the third eight, which in my belief represents pure, non-physical, spiritual connection. So now he's become a spiritual being. He's connected to his Sawul. And what this means is that the journey of the runes, starting with Fehu, we work through becoming physical, and we get to joy, which is the beginning of entering a spiritual state of being. And then we're in this middle second eight here where we're refining our energy, where we're straddling both the physical and the non-physical. And we're working our way to be able to really operate as spiritual entities on earth. And that's why when we get to Sah-Wul, we can rest. We can rest in this power, and we've now become able to move on to the third 8, which of course we're not going to discuss here today. So that is a general outline of the second 8 of the runes. And okay, so now the hunter initiate in this stage of his development has probably, this is what happens in, when we go through pubescence, when we're growing into adulthood. We go through some very difficult, challenging, frightening changes. I mean, on a physical level we change, on a mental level our brains are beginning to change, and we become potentially insecure on an emotional level, finding our place in society and all that. If we've gone through that, we know what that's like. That's what's happening here. The first level of the runes, in my experience, is very empowering and very pleasant to go through those runes. Very, very empowering and pleasant feeling. When we get to the second aspect of this runic journey, it can be rather challenging. Going through the, allowing the universe to get rid of excess energy, which a lot of times we're attached to. We're emotionally attached and on an ego level attached to things that we feel give us stability and comfort and security. So it can be a frightening thing, especially by the time we get to the Yu-Hwaz rune. I mean, there's no way, in my experience, to go through that without experiencing some fear and some challenge. So, when we're like that in life, when we're scared and we're unsure and, we run into some of the things that these runes talk about, the way out is the way through. We lean into it. And this is where we really learn the hunter-warrior mindset. And this is what I believe gave our ancestors such a strong warrior ethic, because it's so easy to just sit back and relax. And in my experience, again, this has a lot to do with healing. The High-Yahl rune is a rune of healing. I've definitely experienced, not only in my own life, but in my practice and in my observation and research, is that disease, more often than not, is a result of latent, built-up excess energy that needs to be removed. And what we do is we try to deal with the symptoms. We try to feel better. And I got nothing against feeling good, so don't get me wrong. But I mean, think about it. When you got a cold, in fact, I remember I knew a guy, a good friend of mine, and when he was sick with a cold, he would talk about medicine. And what he meant was, like NyQuil or something like that. And he had this idea that NyQuil was medicine and was actually healing to him. And I would say, you understand that that's not really helping your body heal. You might be feeling a lessening of symptoms, but it's probably inhibiting your ability to heal from this. But that's our Western mindset, is that when things are difficult, when things are challenging, we want those feelings to go away. But that's not what the runes are teaching. The runes are teaching that when we get through challenge, we go through them. Our ancestors had no problem facing challenges. The Native American traditions, which still retains an unbroken connection into their prehistory, they have that. When a warrior wants to become a warrior, he will challenge himself, and he'll go through all kinds of trials, sometimes very grueling physical, mental and emotional and spiritual trials. Our ancestors were the same way. So this second 8 is the 8 of personal trials. And so if you're feeling uncomfortable, when you're doing your spiritual work, by the way, I run into this all the time. with my students, when I teach them high-level energetic and spiritual practices, they go through a lot of personal challenge. Physical challenge, emotional and personal challenge. And it doesn't matter how much I warn them ahead of time. You know, when I teach some of the very advanced things that I teach, you know, like the spirit fighting martial art forms, I will sit my student down and I will explain to them, this is what you're heading into. You have to be prepared for this. I would not be doing you a service if I didn't warn you what was coming. So now's the time. If you don't want to go through this, don't do it. You know, walk away. Once you commit, you got to follow through, or you could cause yourself some harm. You know, you got to follow through. And you know, it doesn't surprise me anymore. But you know, almost all of them, oh yeah, I can totally do that, and I've gone through a lot in my life. And I go, okay, I've done my part. Now you know it's up to you. And they run into some serious issues that they did not see. I know you told me this was coming, but I had no idea. Well, this is the shamanic process. So really embracing the second eight and working with them is going to be a cleansing experience. It can be extremely liberating and very pleasant. So don't get me wrong. I wouldn't do this stuff if it was just nothing but torture. But part of the shamanic process is being willing to go through this kind of a cleansing. So I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that before we go into the chanting of this second eight of the runes. And I'm going to chant them 3 times each, and then we'll move on. Before we do our chanting, what we're going to do once again, of course you can do these standing if you choose, but you can also do them sitting, or you can do them lying down. I really don't care. The only thing is, if you are going to stand or sit, what's important is that your neck is straight. You know, if your spine is straight, if you can sit in, you know, half or full lotus, that's going to be great, very powerful. But even if you're just sitting like in a chair like I am now, you're going to take your hands and just rest them on your knees. And make sure that you're tilting your head forward as though you're trying to hold a tennis ball underneath your chin. That will open up the back of the neck so that the energy, what we would call the chi or the kundalini, can rise up the back. Doing this is the worst thing you can do. Energy will get stuck. We don't want that. So make sure that you're comfortable and that your neck is straight. And then we're going to begin, and we're going to start with the first rune of the second eight, which is the rune High-Yahl. So you can go ahead and close your eyes. Inhale very deeply. And let's just do 3 cleansing breaths to get ourselves prepared. Exhale. Inhaling a second time. And exhaling. Inhaling a third time. And exhaling. And we can choose to focus here on the third eye. Here we go with the first rune of High-Yahl. Inhale very deeply. Inhaling a second time. Inhaling a third time. Inhaling very deep. Briefly holding the energy and imagine the descending healing power of hail, snow, coursing through your veins, descending from heaven, and exhale. And since we're beginning a new round, let's go ahead and just stay here for a moment, just inhaling and breathing deeply from the navel center. And inviting this cleansing, healing power of the second eight of the runes. Now we'll move on to the next rune, which is Nauthiz. Ready? Inhale. Inhale, second time. Inhale a third time. Inhale very deeply and hold. Allow this constriction to open us up into new realms of thinking, breaking through into new creations, allowing ourself to break out of our old shell and become a new being to continue in our progress of evolution, and releasing the energy, exhaling. Staying with this energy for just a moment, asking yourself the question, what do I need to do? If you have a personal problem or an issue that you're aware of, you ask yourself the question, in order to solve this, what can I do differently than I've done? Now feeling the liberation that Now-Theez brings once we've opened ourselves up to new possibilities. And now we move on to the next rune, which is Eee-Sah. Taking a very deep breath. Inhale once again. Eee-Sah. One last time, inhaling very deep. Inhaling very deeply, holding the breath and imagining the power flowing through us that makes us an individual. This rune is very powerful for opening up the central channel, which goes up through the center of the body, up and out the top of the head. gives us the ability to be proud of our achievements of being a true individual. Now exhale, release the energy. Spend a moment just meditating on this idea of being a fully integrated self, having a healthy sense of self, having a healthy sense of ego, and understanding that it's impossible to completely interact without having a healthy sense of self. Like the icicle that grows out of the indeterminate ice field, it becomes its own individual expression of energy. And now we move into the next rune of Yera. So once again, please take a deep breath, inhaling. Inhaling a second time. Inhaling a third time. Inhaling very deeply and holding. Feeling the integration of the selves within our own being, the cooperation of mind, body, and spirit. Understanding that it is now the true individual that is capable of merging and relating and cooperating with others. And exhale, releasing the energy. Continue to breathe long and deep, focusing on this understanding of cooperation, how gears come together, how the years come together and work with each other, how human beings interact on all levels. Learning true intimacy starts with understanding that we are healthy individuals choosing to come together. So we come together out of choice, not out of need. Now we move to the next rune, which is the hub of all of the runes, the very powerful and extremely important Yu-Hwaz rune. So once again, taking a very deep breath. Inhale a second time. Inhaling a third time. Inhaling once again. Yu-Hwaz. Taking a deep breath and holding. Allowing the power of Yu-Hwaz to destroy anything within us that no longer serves us. And exhale, release any excess energy we no longer need. Aspects of ourself, attitudes, attachments do not serve us. The illusion of security. We release all of these things. And now we allow ourselves, as we continue to breathe long and deep, we allow ourselves to feel the liberation and the power that comes from being cleansed and relieved of all of these unnecessary, energetic, emotional, physical attachments. Now we've moved halfway through all of the runes and we begin our journey towards the purely spiritual. So now we move on to the next rune, which is the rune of Perthro, inhaling very deeply. Inhale once again. One last time, inhale. Inhaling very deeply and holding. Allowing ourselves to align to our highest Orlog, our greatest destiny, our most powerful Dharma, our true path. Exhaling, releasing, surrendering to our highest destiny. Continuing to breathe long and deep, embracing, surrendering, releasing ourselves to our truest nature, our highest path. Accepting this. Now, moving on to the next rune, which is Ell-Hahz. Inhale very deeply. Inhale. Inhale one last time. Ell-Hahz. Inhaling very deeply and holding. Allowing this energy to fill our body and out into our aura. Ell-Hahz is a rune of an empowered aura, an empowered energy field. Exhaling and releasing this energy and allowing ourselves to transmit, to focus and project our energy out into the world. Continuing to breathe long and deep. Feeling this power of Ell-Hahz, spiritual protection, which comes from a powerful and cleansed and integrated self. We now have the power to transmit this energy to protect ourselves, to protect our family and our tribe, our friends, our society. We are now able to be shamans who transmit their energy to the world. Moving on to the last rune in the second 8, which is Sah-Wul, inhaling very deeply. Inhale a second time. Inhaling one last time. Inhaling very deep. Focusing on the heart center where the Sawul resides, allowing this energy to penetrate and to fill. We now connect to our infinite soul. Exhale. Continuing to breathe long and deep. Meditating on the work that we've done. The result of these first 7 runes in the second 8 bring the unavoidable conclusion which brings us into direct connection to our soul, our Sawul, the sun that lives inside of our body, the eternal spirit housed in flesh. Now we have access to this. And it is from here that we are able to launch into the realm of pure, non-physical, spiritual essence. And so, having done this very cleansing and empowering meditation, we now go ahead and relax. What we're going to do now, you may have feeling of a lot of energy in your body. You may feel a lot of cleansing, tingling power running through you. What we're going to do is we're just going to simply rub our hands together like this. And remember, in the first 8, we put our hands over our navel center. We're going to do that in a second. But before we do that, we're going to take our right hand, place it over our left. We're going to place it over our heart center. And we're just going to breathe long and deep, allowing this energy moving into our heart center, allowing us to unlock, to connect the true power of the soul, where we experience the saying that says, We are a spiritual being having a physical experience. We now have integrated these two aspects into ourselves. And once we've felt that we've attained this connection, we then do what we did in the first 8. We're going to take our hands right, interlock them with the left so that the right hand is over the left, the thumbs are interlocking, and we're going to place them over the navel center, and we're going to ground all this energy. It's very important to ground after doing this work. So inhaling very deep. Focusing on the navel center, allowing all of this energy to come and be focused into the navel. The navel will take this energy, purify it, condense it, digest it so that the rest of the body can then make use of this energy and sends it out into all of the meridians and to all of the parts of the body. Continue breathing like this long and deep. Now I want you to do something else. It's very intense energy we're working with, so I want you to rub the hands together. This time I want you to massage your face, massaging the eyes, just like when you wake up in the morning, massaging the face. If you can, go ahead and massage the scalp. Don't worry about messing your hair up. We're so interested in our hairdos. I don't have that problem because I've gotten rid of my hair on my head. Massaging the scalp, massaging the back of the neck, the ears, the front of the neck. Massaging whatever other aspects of the body that you want. If you want to do a complete closed down self-massage, you can go ahead and do that. Okay. So now we have gone through 2/3 of all of the runes. We've done the second 8. So this is some pretty powerful stuff. If you want change, if you're saying to yourself, my life is so boring, or I'm so stuck in my life, I need a change, this is where it happens. Chant the second 8 of the runes and hold on. Be prepared for the change. Again, our ancestors had no fear of this. They went after it. So if you want to tap into the mindset of our ancestors, go into this second 8, preparing to move through. The way out is through. Whenever you need cleansing, whenever you need focus, whenever you need determination to understand, where to go, who you really are. This is the runes to chant. So let's walk through it again. Again, let's go back to our theory behind this, which is that the runes are a sacred rite of spiritual initiation. In fact, our Paleolithic ancestors didn't distinguish between physical and spiritual. Everything was physical and everything was spiritual. They were physical beings, and everything had spiritual power. So let's go through, again, the theory behind this. The hunter initiate, having gone through the first 8 of the runes and empowered himself physically, now he seeks to refine all of his energy and to connect with his soul, to begin the spiritual path, which is the mental and emotional health which is what the emotions are here for. The emotions are here to help us bridge the gap between physical and spiritual. So he's now going to learn that and to gain not only some power in his ability to be beacon of spiritual power, but also to transform himself and become more mature on the mental and the emotional plane. So the first thing that he does is he's introduced to the cleansing power of Hagal. And he then, now that he, has taken this joy that he took from the first 8, the joy of being physically empowered, now he opens himself up to deeper self-assessment, to get rid of that which no longer serves him, to become whole, to become cleansed. That cleansing brings him into a state of becoming aware that he has limitations in thoughts and feelings and abilities. And that limitation gives him a sense of angst, a sense of frustration, a sense of need. And it is that need that forces him to think outside of the box. And he asks himself, what can I do differently? How can I progress beyond my limitations? And he chants the Nauthiz rune, the rune of need, which is also the rune of invention and discovery. Having done that now, he's able to create and invent for himself, and he becomes more self-sufficient, and he has a true feeling of identity, of who he is, because of what he brings, what he creates, which perhaps nobody else has thought of, but certainly he's never thought of it before. And now he has this feeling of a self. He no longer needs the tribe like he did before. He's no longer dependent upon his parents to provide for him. He can provide for himself. And he enters into the space of Eee-Sah, the sense of a healthy ego, true individuality. Now that he's experienced this true individuality, he wants to share it. He feels lonely. He wants to connect. And so he seeks to relate. And he goes into the rune of relationship, which is Yera. He learns how to cooperate. And he understands that true cooperation is not losing his identity in the other person, but retaining his identity while still interacting and allowing another identity to merge with his. And he learns that true state of relationship, relating with another while still being your true self. This relationship will bring out even further limitations in himself. And the energy begins to build, and it gets to a point where the energy needs to release. And we have this violent explosion, which we hit when we get to the Yu-Hwaz rune. And so perhaps in his interacting with others, he argues. Maybe he has arguments within himself. Maybe he's a shaman, and he's been called to connect with the spirits of the ancestors and the spirits of earth, and to connect with the Aesir. And so they choose to transform him. And he is taken apart piece by piece, chopped up into little pieces, thrown into a boiling vat, where then the gods take him out as this new being. He goes through this purging process of life and death. This is the power of the runes coming to completely transform him from just a physical being. Now he begins the journey into true spirituality. So he moves into the next rune of Orlog, the rune of Pear-Throw. And it is Perthro that enables him to walk his true destiny, his true path of service. And now there is nothing impeding him. There's none of the excess, none of the ego that was impeding him before. Now he walks his path to know what his true place is in the tribe, in the community. Having now found his path, walking his true path, he now begins to project an aura of power, which is protective of his own spiritual path and of the path of others around him. He becomes a true spiritual protector. And this is the rune of Ell-Hahz, the rune of spiritual projection and power. His aura is now empowered, and people sense his aura as he walks through the village. People can sense the power coming off of him because he is now with the rune of Ell-Hahz. He's empowered his aura, and his aura protects him from all negativity. And he can extend his aura beyond himself to protect others who need it. And so this is the power of Ell-Hahz. Having gone through these first 7 runes of the second 8, he now comes into the inevitable contact of his own soul. Now he knows he is a spiritual being, and he identifies with his spiritual essence, his Sah-Wul, his soul, his infinite spirit that never dies. And now he knows what his true identity is, and he basks in the light of his own soul, his own Sawul. So this is the process that the hunter initiate has gone through in this second phase of the runes. And so now there's no turning back. And now what we're doing, we stand at a precipice, and we're about to step off that cliff and enter the realm of true spirituality, true non-physical being. These are the runes of the gods that we're about to enter into. And that we will save for the next installment. So again, I would like to encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to watch this video and to follow through with me on the chanting of these runes while reading the book Rune Shamanism. This is meant to be a companion video series for that book, Rune Shamanism. All of my works, all of my books can be found on the link, which is on the thundershamanism.com page. You can also find many of my books on the thunderwizard.com homepage. I would recommend, if you're going through this phase, to meditate on this. You know, there are 2 ways, in my view, of working with the second 8. Second 8 is very powerful. First 8, they're powerful too, but that, in my experience, is a very physically empowering, very pleasant experience. And these runes are pleasant also if you like the idea of spiritual cleansing. But if this is a new concept, if there's a lot of excess that needs to be burned off, this second 8 might be rather challenging. So I'm not going to say that you need to chant them every day. Having said that, if you're a brave sort, then I challenge you to chant this every day for 40 days. It takes 40 days for the subconscious to make a shift. If you make a vow, don't make a vow if you're not going to follow through with it. Understand that if you do make a vow, you will most likely be challenged and you will want to stop. Don't. If you make a vow, stick with it. And if you choose to chant these second 8 for a period of 40 days, do it once a day for 40 days, I can guarantee you will experience a change. And, regardless of whether you experience challenge or not, if your goal is to achieve your highest destiny, then you don't care. And the other side of that is, the more relaxed and willing you are to go through that change, the more exhilarating this process becomes. So, there's that. This second 8 is very sacred and very empowering and very exciting for me. So I appreciate you taking the time to walk through this with me. So that's it for this video installment of Rune Shamanism. After you've watched this and after you've practiced the second 8 according to whatever you'd like to do, you can move on now to the third installment of the Rune Shamanism series, where we're going to talk about the third 8, which is, as I said, the runes of the gods, which connect us to pure, infinite, immortal, spiritual power. Until that time, thank you, my friends, and I say to you, Vas du Heil. May you be whole, may you be healthy.